It was a bright afternoon on Wilshire Boulevard, the heart of Los Angeles, where the fast-paced city buzzed with life. Ethan Carter, a 35-year-old businessman, maneuvered his sleek black sports car through the traffic. On the surface, his life seemed enviable: a sprawling mansion in Beverly Hills, a thriving career, and two energetic 7-year-old sons, Liam and Caleb, who were his pride and joy. But as Ethan drove that day, his mind was far from the glamour that surrounded him. The weight of his responsibilities, the long hours, and the nagging feeling of something missing gnawed at him. His polished life was a carefully constructed illusion. And deep down, he knew it. Not far away, Sophia Bennett walked briskly down the bustling sidewalk. Her steps were hurried, her face etched with worry. She had just left a tense meeting with her lawyer, the details of her pending divorce from Mark Reynolds swirling in her mind. Years of unhappiness in a controlling marriage had led her to this moment. But even now, the road to freedom felt uncertain. Sophia's modest apartment in Silver Lake offered her solace, but the emotional scars left behind were still raw. The world of Ethan and Sophia, so different in every way, collided in a dramatic and unexpected manner that day. Distracted by an urgent work call, Ethan glanced down at his phone just as the traffic light ahead turned red. Sophia, lost in her thoughts, stepped into the crosswalk without noticing the incoming car. The screech of brakes tore through the air, but it was too late. Ethan's car skidded sharply, narrowly missing Sophia, but crashing hard into a nearby streetlight. The loud impact stunned everyone around, bringing the chaotic Los Angeles street to a sudden halt. Sophia froze, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, everything was still, the bustling city fading into silence. Then reality snapped back, and she ran toward the car. "Sir, can you hear me? Are you okay?" she shouted, pulling at the driver's side door. Ethan was slumped over the wheel, unconscious, with a thin line of blood trickling down his temple. Panic surged through Sophia as she fumbled for her phone to call emergency services. "Please, someone help," she cried out to the gathering crowd. The minutes stretched endlessly until the sound of sirens broke through the tension. Paramedics rushed to Ethan's aid, carefully extracting him from the vehicle and stabilizing his condition. As Sophia stepped back to let them work, her gaze fell on the back seat of the car. Two small backpacks lay there, brightly colored and unmistakably belonging to children. A chill ran down her spine. "Are there kids in the car?" Sophia urgently asked one of the police officers who had arrived at the scene. "No, ma'am," the officer replied. The driver was alone, but it seems he has two young children waiting for him at home. Sophia's heart ached at the thought of those boys, unaware of what had just happened to their father. Memories of her own father's absence during her childhood surfaced, and before she could stop herself, she spoke. "Officer, I saw the accident. Can I go with him to the hospital? Maybe I can help with the children." The officer looked at her, measuring her sincerity. "You'll need to provide a statement later," he said. "But if you're willing to help, we won't stop you." Sophia nodded, her resolve firm. She climbed into the back of a police car that would take her to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, her heart heavy with a mixture of fear and determination. She didn't fully understand why, but she knew she had to see this through. At the hospital, chaos unfolded as Ethan was rushed into surgery. Sophia found herself waiting in the bustling lobby, surrounded by strangers whose lives were all in their own states of upheaval. Hours passed before a doctor finally emerged, his expression somber. "Family of Ethan Carter?" Sophia hesitated but stood, her voice tentative. "I'm not family. I witnessed the accident. He has kids, and I wanted to help." The doctor's eyes softened. "Mr. Carter is stable, but in a coma. We don't know when or if he'll wake up. Do you know how to contact any close relatives?" Before Sophia could respond, a social worker approached, holding a folder. "We've managed to locate Mr. Carter's children," she said. "They're with their nanny, but it seems there are no other immediate relatives. Their mother passed away a few years ago." Sophia's heart clenched. Without thinking, she said, "I can help with the boys. I'm a teacher. I've worked with kids for years. Please, let me take care of them until he recovers. The social worker studied her carefully, clearly taken aback by the offer. That's a generous gesture. But I need to do this, Sophia interrupted, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Those boys need someone. I can't explain it, but I feel like I have to help. After extensive discussions and a background check, the hospital and social services agreed to let Sophia temporarily care for Liam and Caleb under supervision. That night, she brought the twins to her small apartment in Silver Lake. The boys, scared and confused, clung to each other as they entered the unfamiliar space. Sophia did her best to reassure them, showing them where they would sleep and preparing a simple dinner. As she tucked them into the pull-out bed she had hastily set up in the living room, Liam's small voice broke the silence. Will our daddy be okay? His wide, tear-filled eyes stared up at Sophia, pleading for an answer. Sophia knelt beside him, her heart breaking. Your daddy is very strong, she said softly. We're going to take care of him together. Okay. Liam nodded, his grip on Caleb tightening. As Sophia stood and looked out at the sparkling lights of Los Angeles through her window, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose. She didn't know what the coming days would bring, but she was determined to face them with courage. Sophia Bennett's life turned upside down as she adjusted to her new role as a caregiver for Liam and Caleb. The once quiet mornings in her Silver Lake apartment were now filled with the chatter of two energetic boys who were still trying to make sense of their father's absence. Every day was a new challenge, but Sophia felt a responsibility greater than anything she'd ever known. Her days began before sunrise. Sophia woke early to prepare breakfast, pack lunches, and help the twins get ready for school. She had rearranged her small apartment to make space for them, converting her modest dining area into a play corner and turning the pull-out couch in the living room into their shared bed. The twins' presence brought a liveliness to the apartment that had been missing for years. But it was also exhausting. After dropping them off at school, Sophia would head to her job at a nearby elementary school, where she taught a class of third graders. Her work was already demanding, but the added responsibility of caring for Liam and Caleb left her with little time to herself. Afternoons were spent helping them with homework, preparing dinner, and visiting Ethan at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Though he remained in a coma, Sophia brought the boys to his room every evening, hoping their presence might stir something in him. Nathan, the quieter of the two, spent most visits holding his father's hand and telling him about their day. Caleb, on the other hand, often sat in the corner of the room, drawing pictures or fidgeting with his toys, while Nathan channeled his worry inward. Caleb expressed his pain through rebellion. Sophia found Caleb's behavior particularly challenging. He threw tantrums over the smallest things, refusing to eat, stomping his feet when asked to go to bed, or lashing out when Nathan tried to console him. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult day, Caleb stared at Sophia from across the kitchen table, his eyes filled with defiance. "Why are you helping us?" he asked abruptly, his voice sharp. "You don't even know us. You don't know my dad." The question caught Sophia off guard. She set down the pencil she had been using to check their homework and took a deep breath. "You're right, Caleb," she said gently. "I didn't know your dad before the accident, but when I saw what happened to him, I knew I couldn't just walk away. And when I met you and Nathan, I wanted to be here for you, because sometimes we meet people who need us, and we have to step up." Caleb's frown softened, but his guard was still up. "Do you think Daddy's going to wake up soon?" he asked, his voice quieter this time. Sophia swallowed hard, wishing she had a better answer. "I don't know, Caleb," she admitted, "but what I do know is that we'll be here for him, hoping and waiting. And no matter what happens, we'll get through it together." Caleb didn't respond, but later that evening, Sophia noticed he had drawn a picture of their little group, a stick figure version of himself, Nathan, and her standing beside a hospital bed with Ethan lying in it. It wasn't much, but it was a small sign that Caleb was beginning to trust her. Despite the challenges, moments of joy began to emerge. Sophia discovered that Liam loved puzzles and would spend hours quietly piecing them together on the living room floor. Caleb, despite his tantrums, had a knack for storytelling and would often make up wild, imaginative tales to entertain Nathan. The boys began to look to Sophia for comfort, whether it was asking for bedtime hugs or seeking her help with school projects. On weekends, Sophia took them to the park or the local library, trying to create a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos. It wasn't the lavish lifestyle they were used to in their Beverly Hills mansion, but the boys seemed to find comfort in the simplicity of her care. One Saturday afternoon, Sophia brought them to a small farmer's market near her apartment. Caleb darted from stall to stall, his curiosity reignited, while Nathan stayed close to her side, holding her hand. They shared freshly baked cookies and listened to a local guitarist play cheerful tunes. For the first time in weeks, the boys laughed freely, their worries momentarily forgotten. That evening, back at the hospital, Sophia read aloud from one of the boys' favorite storybooks as Nathan and Caleb sat by Ethan's bedside. The room was quiet except for the soft sound of her voice and the occasional hum of the medical machines. As she finished the story, Nathan leaned forward, clutching his father's hand tightly. "Daddy," he said, his voice trembling, "please wake up. We miss you so much." The raw emotion in Nathan's voice brought tears to Sophia's eyes. She reached over and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, silently vowing to stay strong for both of them. The weeks dragged on, and life settled into a routine, but the uncertainty of Ethan's condition loomed over them all. One afternoon, as they sat in the hospital room, a doctor named Dr. Harper entered with a subtle smile. "I have some promising news," he said, addressing Sophia and the boys. "Ethan's brain activity has increased. It's small, but it's a sign he's responding to your voices and presence." "Does that mean he'll wake up?" Nathan asked, his eyes wide with hope. Dr. Harper hesitated but nodded slightly. "It's a step in the right direction. Keep talking to him, visiting him. It seems to be making a difference." The news lifted their spirits, and as they left the hospital that evening, Sophia noticed a renewed sense of hope in the boys. They clung to the idea that their father might return to them, and though the road ahead was still uncertain, it gave them something to hold on to. As the boys drifted off to sleep that night, Sophia sat alone in the quiet apartment, her thoughts heavy. Though Ethan remained a stranger in many ways, she felt an unshakable connection to him through the boys. They had brought her into their world, and now she couldn't imagine life without them. Looking out at the city lights twinkling in the distance, Sophia realized how much her life had changed. She was no longer just a teacher or a woman navigating the fallout of her own broken marriage. She had become something more, a source of strength, stability, and love for two boys who needed her. And though the path ahead was uncertain, she felt ready to face it with them by her side. The days passed with an exhausting, yet steady rhythm for Sophia Bennett. Mornings were for school drop-offs and lesson planning, afternoons for homework and hospital visits, and evenings for bedtime stories and quiet reflection. Life had become a balancing act, but one she was growing stronger at managing. Liam and Caleb, who had initially clung to their father's absence with fear and confusion, began to adapt. They still missed Ethan deeply, but Sophia's unwavering presence helped them feel secure. Yet just as she started to find her footing, a new complication arose. One morning, as Sophia was preparing breakfast, her phone buzzed on the counter. The name on the screen made her heart skip a beat. Catherine Carter, Ethan's sister. "Hello," Sophia answered cautiously. "This is Catherine Carter," came the smooth, authoritative voice on the other end. "I'm Ethan's sister. I've been informed about the accident and that you've been caring for Liam and Caleb. I'm flying into Los Angeles this afternoon, and I'd like to discuss the boys' future with you." Sophia's grip tightened on the phone. "Of course," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'll meet you at Ethan's house." After hanging up, a wave of anxiety washed over her. Catherine's tone had been polite, but there was an undercurrent of control that left Sophia uneasy. Would Catherine see her as an intruder? Would she dismiss the bond Sophia had worked so hard to build with the boys? That afternoon, Sophia stood on the steps of Ethan's grand Beverly Hills mansion, her heart pounding. The imposing house, with its towering columns and manicured gardens, felt worlds apart from her modest apartment in Silver Lake. Liam and Caleb were inside with their nanny, blissfully unaware of the impending meeting. A sleek black car pulled up, and Catherine stepped out, her tailored suit and confident stride exuding authority. She locked eyes with Sophia immediately, her gaze sharp but composed. "Sophia Bennett?" Catherine asked, extending a hand. "Yes," Sophia replied, shaking it firmly. "It's good to meet you." Catherine's handshake was brief. "Shall we go inside?" she said, gesturing toward the house. The two women settled into the sunlit living room, and for a moment, there was only silence as Catherine studied Sophia. "I want to thank you," Catherine began, her tone measured, "for stepping in during such a difficult time. Caring for Liam and Caleb couldn't have been easy." Sophia nodded, unsure of where the conversation was headed. "They're incredible boys," she said earnestly. "It's been challenging, but I'm glad I could be there for them." Catherine's expression softened, but her voice remained firm. "I appreciate everything you've done, but as their aunt, I intend to take over their care. They're family, and they belong with me." Sophia's stomach tightened. She had known this moment might come, but the thought of stepping away from Liam and Caleb felt unbearable. "I understand," she said carefully, "but I've built a strong connection with them over the past few weeks. They've been through so much, and I want to ensure the transition is as smooth as possible." Catherine studied her for a long moment. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "You had no obligation to step in. What made you take this on?" Sophia took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "When I saw the accident, I couldn't walk away. I grew up without a father, and I know how much that loss can hurt. I wanted to be there for Liam and Caleb, even if just temporarily. And over time, they've become a part of my life. I care about them deeply." Catherine's expression softened further, and for the first time, she seemed to see Sophia not as an outsider, but as someone who had genuinely stepped up in a time of need. "I'll think about what's best for the boys," she said finally. "For now, let's focus on Ethan's recovery." Over the next few weeks, Sophia and Catherine worked together to support the boys and navigate the challenges of Ethan's condition. Despite their initial tension, the two women found common ground in their shared commitment to Liam and Caleb. Catherine even began joining the family on hospital visits, her presence a source of comfort for the boys. One afternoon, as they sat by Ethan's bedside, Dr. Harper entered the room with a hopeful expression. "Ethan's brain activity has increased significantly," he said. "It's possible he could wake up soon." The news sent a wave of relief and anticipation through the room. That evening, back at home, Sophia tucked Liam and Caleb into bed, their eyes shining with renewed hope. "Do you think Daddy will wake up tomorrow?" Caleb asked, his voice filled with excitement. "Maybe," Sophia said with a smile, brushing his hair back. "But no matter what, we'll be right there for him." The next morning, the call came. "Sophia." Catherine's voice was breathless over the phone. "Ethan's awake." Sophia dropped everything and rushed to the hospital with the boys. When they entered the room, Ethan was sitting up in bed, his face pale but alert. The sight of him brought tears to Liam and Caleb's eyes as they ran to his side. "Daddy," they cried, hugging him tightly. Ethan's voice was hoarse, but filled with emotion. "I missed you so much," he said, holding them close. His gaze shifted to Sophia, who stood quietly by the door. "You must be Sophia," he said softly. She nodded, her voice catching. "I'm so glad you're okay." Ethan's eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking, "for taking care of my boys, for everything." In the weeks that followed, Ethan focused on his recovery, and Sophia began to step back, letting him reclaim his role as father. But the bond she had built with Liam and Caleb remained unshaken. They often visited her in Silver Lake, their laughter filling her small apartment with warmth. One evening, as she sat with Ethan and Catherine, discussing the boys' future, Ethan turned to her. "You've become a part of our family, Sophia," he said, "and I hope you'll stay in our lives." Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "I'd like that," she said. Though life was far from perfect, Sophia felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't known in years. She had found a purpose, a family, and a place where she truly belonged. As the city lights twinkled outside her window that night, Sophia knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful new chapter for all of them.